Chapter 7. The dragon! I gasped. I tossed the card onto the table. Emily and Kyle stood frozen, eyes wide, mouths open. It's the dragon! I repeated, turning to the doorway. Connor? What dragon? A familiar voice called. Mom and Dad strode into the kitchen, drenched from the rain. Mom's curly brown hair was mad fire on her head. Raindrops slid down her cheeks. Dad's blue work shirt was soaked through. We were playing a game, I explained. My hands were shaking. I grabbed the edge of the table so they couldn't see them. At least he didn't get caught in the sudden downpour, Mom said, kicking off her soaked sneakers. Dad stepped up to the table. Did you see what happened next door? Did you hear the commotion? What a disaster, Mom added. The poor Nelsons. Huh? What happened? I demanded. Dad shook rainwater from his hair. Go take a look. It's incredible. I can't believe you didn't hear it, Mom said, frowning. I took off to the kitchen door, threw it open, and burst outside. Emily and Kyle followed close behind me. The rain had stopped. The heavy dark clouds were pulling apart, allowing shafts of the late afternoon sunlight to filter through. I ran past a wooden picket fence that separates our yards. Then I slid into a stop on the wet grass when Nelson's house came into view. I should say, what was left of their house. The house had been trashed. The windows were all broken. Shutters lay scattered over the wet ground. One wall was on its side, clumps of bricks everywhere. Half the roof had fallen into the house. The hedge along the front walk had been trampled. The flowers in the garden at the side had all been uprooted. The mailbox lay on its side in the mud. Neighbors circled the house in a hushed silence. I saw Mr. and Mrs. Nelson talking to two grim-faced police officers. They were both talking furiously at once, gesturing wildly with their hands. What happened? I asked one of the neighbors. Was it the storm? She shrugged. I don't think so. The Nelsons say they were attacked. I gasped. I could hear Mr. Nelson's voice as stepped over the broken glass and moved closer. It was some kind of army, he declared, shaking his head. They were dressed up, like knights or something. Knights? Mrs. Nelson started to sob. It was so frightening, she cried. They were on horseback. They wore metal helmets. We couldn't see their faces. They... Her husband slid his arm around her, trying to comfort her. They attacked our house, Miss Nelson told the officers. It was like a movie or something. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. Knights on horseback attacking our house. I shrank back. My throat tightened. I couldn't swallow. My legs suddenly felt weak. It wasn't a movie, I knew. It was our game. Be afraid. In the game, I sent my knights to attack the neighboring castle, and the Nelsons were attacked by an army of masked knights. I suddenly felt sick. I covered my mouth, waited for my stomach to settle down. What can I do? I asked myself. How can I explain? The police officers were arguing with the Nelsons. They didn't believe the wild story. But I did. I knew this was my fault. I knew the card game had caused this. I looked up and saw someone staring at me from the deep shadows behind the trampled hedge. He stepped over the hedge, out into the light. Mr. Zarwood. His eyes locked on me, his expression set in a cold scowl. I took a step back, prepared to run to the safety of my house. Mr. Zarwood moved quickly, taking long strides across the wet grass. His yellow slicker flew behind him. His big belly bounced up and down with each step. Anything you want to tell me, young man? He rasped, staring hard into my eyes. Anything you want to tell me about my missing deck of cards? He knows, I realized. Mr. Zarwood knows that I stole his card game. What is he planning to do? What is he going to do to me?